So by now everybody's seen The Girl Who Fell in Love with Her Psychiatrist, right? I gotta talk about this because my boss, Dr. P, had a similar situation. If you don't know, he's a psychiatrist. I work in mental health research. I've also been a counselor before, but because of medical stuff, it's easier for me to have a job that works mostly from home. So I work in mental health research right now. And that man has sent me like 700 videos of people talking about the girl who fell in love with her psychiatrist because he's never shared his story. I've never shared his story on here because it hasn't ever came up, but now it has, because that is literally why he got into mental health research. So Dr. P has 2 PhDs, and he actually did regular patient, like what would be considered regular patients. He worked with trauma patients for years, literally decades, before he switched to mental health research it was 11 or 12 years ago. And don't worry, I got permission to share the story. But one of the parts of working with trauma patients that a lot of us in the mental health field don't talk about enough publicly, I mean, we talk about it amongst ourselves quite a bit because it's something we prepare ourselves for, but something that like a lot of the public doesn't. I say public like we're some secret agency or something. That's not what I mean. People who are not in the mental health field, okay? That's who I'm referring to when I talk about the public. This is an issue where when you are working with patients who have trauma and you're really digging deep and you're going through these things, there is a risk of them bonding to you. Even if you are the most professional person, I mean, Dr. P literally has a whole shelf of like freaking awards. He's been recognized before. That's why I say Dr. P instead of his full name. Like, dude is very good at what he does. He has never crossed a line. He has always remained super, super professional. But it happens. When you are working with somebody with very deep-seated trauma, it can happen. They get an unhealthy attachment. And that is literally what ended up happening to him. Obviously for HIPAA reasons, I don't know all the details of her case or anything like that. But I do know the details of what ended up happening to him. She got obsessive with him. They had some sort of trauma breakthrough recently, and that's where the obsession had started. She had years of trauma from things that she had went through. That's what he was working on her with, and he was the first doctor to really have a breakthrough with her, which, being somebody in the mental health, that's a good thing. That is a good thing, right? To have the breakthrough. The problem is once you get to that breakthrough, sometimes things can happen. And people who have those traumas like to bond onto people to attach. And that is exactly what she did with him. She started stalking that man. And she would go around. The craziest part is she basically, if you've ever seen Orange is the New Black and seen, what's her name? Laura. That girl, similar situation. They didn't go on a date or anything like that. But she was going around telling people that they were in a relationship. Like, he had to do all this stuff to prove that he had never crossed it. Like, everybody was standing up for him and stuff because he could have gotten in big trouble. And he's like, dude, I haven't done anything. But she was literally going around telling everybody, to the point where, he had, at that point, had said, hey, no more appointments. Like, you have to see another doctor. He had switched her to a female doctor because she, to hoping that the bonding thing wouldn't happen again. But even with the switch of care, she still became obsessed. It got to the point where she bought herself a ring and was telling people, all these people, like, she was making book face posts and everything on her private account, pretending like she had literally convinced herself that they were going to get married. She was planning on a marriage. She was posting pictures and talking about organizing. She went to a dress store, which we know because she posted a picture of her in a wedding dress at David's bridal. It got to the point where he had to get a restraining order. And he really didn't want to do that. He fought off, like, dude, honestly, he should have called the cops much earlier. But he knew that she was mentally ill and didn't want to do that to her. But it did get to the point where he literally had to get a restraining order. He did work, in a regular office for a couple months after, but it got to the point where he got scared to have that happen again. So he switched over mental health research. I think the worst part about this was a lot of people kind of fed into that delusion because she had a regular, average, everyday job. She was very successful in her work. Like, she did not come off like the stereotype you see on TV of somebody being crazy, like the other girl from Orange is the New Black, the one that Chakes the Rattles. I can't think of her name in the show. I love the actress, can't think of her name, but she didn't come off as the stereotype, which is something that we don't talk about enough in society. Because with all of the stereotypes we see in media, people, when you say somebody's like out of their mind, you think, the person running around jingling a thing and screaming about the government. But there are people who are successful and fully functioning in their careers and in their personal lives that have really bad mental health struggles. It's why there are so many situations where somebody unfortunately takes their own life, and then people are like, we never saw it come. What happened? Like, they were so happy and successful. It's because you didn't know what was going on the inside. So people genuinely believed her because she was successful. She didn't seem out of her mind or anything. People didn't know. Her work was like, she had coworkers that ended up in this situation where they were getting like testimony and all this stuff, who were saying, yeah, she seemed normal. We had no idea. We really did think she was freaking engaged to this doctor. And I think that's what scares me, is the internet and how people are responding to the story, because a lot of people responding to the story are talking about how like wild it is, right? But then I also see people feeding into it, and it's like, they're like, oh girl, go get it, blah, blah, blah. No. Until I hear his side of the story, no. Because it very much could be a situation like Dr. P went through where she needs help. Somebody said she's like a personal trainer or something like that. But that's one of the dark sides of working in mental health that people don't talk about nearly as much. I have never had that experience that I know of. I mean, there could be somebody out there. I really hope they don't, because the people that I've worked with, which to be clear is not making fun of mental health. If you don't know me, one of the jobs I did while in mental health research, I was interning / doing a residency under Dr. W, who was going into prisons and interviewing convicted serial killers for a study he was doing. So, like, that's what I mean by that. I'm not saying I have a problem with somebody's mental illness. I'm just saying, like, considering those are the people I was helping him interview, I hope none of them are obsessed with me. But it's terrifying. It's terrifying because you get this line that you get, that basically this crossroad you're stuck at, where certain treatments do have that risk, but they're also treatments that could really help the patient. So you're just kind of like stuck where it's like, you really want to help this patient, but no matter how many precautions you take, there's always going to be that tiny risk that somebody could end up obsessive. My biggest advice is, if you are a patient and you notice that you're starting to feel attraction to your counselor, to your psychiatrist, to your whatever provider that you're seeing, switch providers. And also for those of you guys who are like making comments I've seen being like, oh, go get it, girl, or whatever. I haven't watched her full 12 parts. I've only watched the summaries from like people I know who do really good summaries. But because it's like a lot of parts and she keeps updating. But please don't, if you see somebody in a situation like this, it's better to be safe than sorry. Please don't feed into that delusion.